The meeting of the Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission is now called to order, and I will ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I will direct your attention to the whiteboard over here where we have our flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I will ask everyone to please remain standing, that as is tradition with our public meetings that we get to have, I like to draw attention to the importance of including physical activity in your regular routine. The experts recommend if you include around 30 minutes of physical activity of some sort in your daily routine, it greatly reduces your risk towards chronic disease, of which managing chronic disease makes up about 70% of our healthcare spending. So our little activity that we're going to do today is very simple. We're just going to do some shoulder shrugs. Kind of like this. In the Navy, there's very good job. Thank you very much. You go ahead and have a seat. That's right. Many latecomers have to do their own activity. That takes us to the next item on our agenda. We have the approval of the minutes of September 17th. All members of the commission were provided a copy of the minutes in their packets prior to. So at this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Madam Chair, I move that the minutes be approved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And the minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is a presentation on congestion in Northwest Indiana and the urban mobility report. So I will ask Scott Weber and James Winters to come forward to give the presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Stephen warned me that as the presentation is booting up, that I may need to vamp for a couple minutes. And I wanted to point out that this was a presentation that we gave just a couple weeks ago to the TPC meeting. So if you were in attendance at that meeting, now is your time to gently nod off to sleep, and I will be sure to wake you up at the end of the presentation. But thank you very much. My name is James Winters. I'm the new regional planner and policy analyst at NERPC, and I'm joined by Scott Weber, and today we're going to talk to you about the 2015 Urban Mobility Scorecard. For those of you who don't know, the 2015 Urban Mobility Scorecard was just released this summer. And we're going to talk about that document, and we're also going to talk about congestion trends in the region and nationally. We're going to talk about compounding problems of those trends, and then we're going to summarize with possible solutions for our region. The reason why we're talking about it today is because in the region, so the Chicagoland region, which includes parts of Northwest Indiana, Hold it closer, sorry. Stephen also warned me about this. But the Chicago metropolitan region was ranked 8th worst in yearly delay per auto commuter, 14th worst in travel time index, and 5th worst in excess fuel per auto commuter, and 7th worst in congestion cost per auto commuter.
So when we talk about the 2015 Urban Mobility Report, we want to know who wrote it. Well, it was written by the Texas A&M Transportation Institute, which is a research agency housed at Texas A&M University, comprised of over 200 professionals from both the public and private sectors who contribute, and it's endowed with over $65 million. The mission statement of this Transportation Institute is to identify and solve transportation problems through research to transfer technology, knowledge, and to develop diverse human resources to meet the transportation challenges of tomorrow. It's a very technical-focused agency. Obviously, we as planners have that technical expertise, but we also have that. We also need to work with public officials on actually making solutions for our region. So, where does the data come from in this report? It comes from INRIX traffic data from inside the vehicles, probes, and in-road sensors. So GPS devices that automatically transmit this data, and also Bluetooth-enabled devices inside the vehicles, like your cell phone, for example, automatically transmit every 15 minutes. And this is analyzed on over 113 million miles of centerline in the US, so most major roads.
So the report analyzed the causes and impacts of congestion. Overall, what the report pointed to is that the reason why congestion is getting worse in the country is because overall we have more money. We're at the other end of the Great Recession, and there are more vehicles traveling because people have more money in their wallets and because gas is cheaper than ever. And while that's a good thing, it does cause some problems. So this is an economic index for the country. This is produced by the Philadelphia Fed. Every gray line that you see is the trend of every state in the United States. And this chart goes from 1979 to 2015. The dark blue line is northwestern Indiana, and the dark green line is Indiana, and the light green line, which you can't see very well, is the United States on average. So if we look at this chart, I want to highlight the 2007 to 2012 figures. As you can see, this is the dip that we experienced in the Great Recession. So, but I want you to pay attention to what's happening on the far right end of the graph, where now that we're on the other side of the Great Recession, those figures are higher. We do have more money. We are experiencing marginal incremental growth. However, we're on the other end of it, and things are getting better. This is important because this is a moving 12-month total of all miles traveled on all roads in the country. If we highlight that same period of time, again from 2007 to 2012, we're seeing a dip because people don't have as much income. They're not traveling as much. But now that we're on the far right, in 2015, people are traveling more than ever. And they're doing this because gas prices are low, and they have more money in their wallets. Again, a good thing, but we have some problems we have to take care of. So another problem that we're seeing with it is that we're seeing more freight travel on all of our roads. The American consumer is more occupied with getting a greater variety of goods from all over the world. What that means, though, is that we have more trucks on the road. So in 1998, we had 10 billion domestic tons of freight shipped to the United States, and we're projected to have 18 billion by 2020. So here's a graph of average daily truck traffic in 1998. So you can see the thickest line is 50,000 trucks per day. And this is from the U.S. Department Transportation Freight Study. So now if we project that out to 2020, we can see that freight traffic is expected to grow exponentially all over the country. And somewhere in that map is Indiana, just in case you couldn't see it because it's eclipsed by the amount of freight that we're going to have. And this is important because Indiana actually touches all contiguous 48 states in the Union. So if you're shipping something from California and you need to go to the East Coast, chances are you got to pass through Indiana at some point. And again, this is important for us because we have what's identified as a significant bottleneck in our region up here at on I-9094. But how is this relevant locally? So our industry in Indiana is very much tied to transportation. So here on the far left of the graph, this is an analysis of, or an identification of jobs by industry in northwestern Indiana. The dark blue section is all the jobs in Lake County. Green is Porter, and very faint green is LaPorte. So there's 49,776 manufacturing jobs in Lake County alone. What I've also highlighted is transportation here in the middle. So manufacturing obviously relies on freight so that they can get their goods to the market efficiently and with low cost. Transportation relies on it because, well, they don't make a living if they don't get their goods on time. So if we're having a congestion issue, we have a severe bottleneck, this can significantly impact our economy if we're not accommodating for that in the future. But since we're talking about freight traffic only represents 7% of urban travel. However, freight is absorbing 18% of the congestion cost per vehicle. And that's a problem because industry is bearing more of that cost that congestion causes.
So what are some of the metrics in this report? Well, one of them is delay per commuter. This is the average time per year that the typical commuter sits in congested experience, so in traffic. And if you look at the red graph, that's for the US, and that increased from about 20 hours per year in 1982 to over 40 hours per year by 2014. In other words, it's about a week of vacation time, you're just sitting in traffic. I'd much rather be on vacation than sitting in traffic. In Northwest Indiana, that number is even higher, about 48 hours per week. And we only have data from the last 2 years, but 48 hours a week just 2 years ago to now almost 78 hours a week in 2015. So that amount of congestion is really increasing. And in the US, this is the total delay in the US, the number of total hours, not per commuter. It increased from about 2 billion hours back in 1982 to about 7 billion hours now in 2014. And looking at that number for Northwest Indiana in this region, that increased from about 14 million hours back in 2013 to 22 million hours back in 2014. So really, the number's gone up. Again, we only have data from the last 2 years. So we overlay these graphs in the US and Northwest Indiana. We're just a tiny blip on the radar down here in Northwest Indiana compared to the US. But if you look at the rate of increase in the last 2 years, the US saw a 1.5% increase in total delay in the last 2 years, but Northwest Indiana a 45% increase. So numbers going up a lot faster here. And even in the last year, a 10% increase. How much this is costing our economy? Well, James mentioned that all the economic sectors that are involved in transportation and congestion costs, well, that was about $40 billion in the US economy back in 1982 to now about $160 billion in 2014. And here in Northwest Indiana, in our local economy, congestion has cost us up from $310 billion back in 2013 to now about $500 million in 2015. So it's gone up again. What are the delay trends? Well, clearly there's congestion increases through the week from Monday through Friday, and then dips down on the weekend. We see that. And also during the day, congestion increases right around the rush hours and in the evening rush hour. But even in the middle of the day, there's still quite a bit of congestion going on. So that's interesting, a lot higher than overnight.
But like I said earlier, it's not all bad. If we have a congestion problem, it means that our economy is growing, and that's a good thing. But we do have to identify some solutions for it. So the Urban Mobility Scorecard identified these 6 solutions for people like us to consider. And that's adding capacity in critical corridors, providing choices, changing the use pattern, so how we drive on the road, diversifying the development pattern or where we're building, and then setting realistic expectations for ourselves. So adding capacity in critical corridors. Well, NERC has been doing this for a long time. So we have, my predecessor, Jack Eskin, produced a bottleneck improvement project called the At-Grade Crossing Study, where what he did was he looked at the top 15 worst intersections between freight and between roads. He identified the problems, he came up with possible funding solutions, and then he was able to hand that information off to you guys so that if you choose to improve those facilities, that you have those tools available if you need it. We also did the regional corridor study. So if you have any questions about this, we talked to Scott or E-Man after today. But this was identifying where congestion happens in a region, and then also figuring out what gaps need to be filled so people can get to where they need to go without having to be stuck. And nationally, we saw this great example. I love talking about this because I think it's really innovative. What they did was they allowed marginal shoulder lane use in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. And what that means is during those peak times of day when rush hour is really, really bad, and instead of widening the roadway and spending billions of dollars to do that, they just made it so that that shoulder lane is accessible between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. so that you have that extra lane, but you also have the safety component that's there with the shoulder. So it's there when you need it, and when you don't need it, it's still safe to drive on.
Another solution in the report is to provide choices. These are alternatives to driving alone by yourself in the car. Here at NERC, we adopted the Northwest Indiana Intelligent Transportation Systems architecture earlier this year. This is a way to improve technology so that you have better choices and more informed about making decisions. Obviously, we have travel time signs throughout the region that tell us how long it takes to get places. And our transit is a pretty robust network here in Northwest Indiana, and I want to highlight the fact that agencies like the NICD have implemented electronic fare payments, and that could hold promise for the future in making transit a better choice. One example that we really liked around the country is in San Francisco, where these drivers stuck in this traffic jam actually see on the sign how long it'll take them to get to where they're going sitting in that traffic jam, or if they want to take a train and they see that clear choice alternative, and they can see that that train time is shorter than sitting in that traffic jam, and it even tells them when the train leaves. So this is the kind of more innovative intelligent transportation system solution that could be possible here in North Carolina.
Changing the use pattern. So people are driving at the same time every day, all day. What if we mix that up? So there's a number of household names like Google, Disney, who are offering flexible work time options. And a lot of millennials really like this idea. So if you know that you are going to be stuck in traffic from 8 a.m. from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., then what if you could change your schedule so you could arrive at work at 9 or 10 a.m.? Then you're taking a percentage of drivers off the road, so you're not delaying everybody else, and getting them to work when they need to get there. Also, telecommunication options. NERC just updated our janitorial service provider, which means that so someone can come in and clean our office. One of our providers couldn't make the meeting, so we were able to conference him in from Las Vegas. And that's a great thing, because he's the one we chose. And we would not be able to do that had it not be for technology. Also, off-peak shipping. Every day I get stuck behind this one steel truck on my way to work on 149. So if there was a way to work with businesses to communicate to them how important it is to ship on off-peak hours, maybe Steve wouldn't yell at me for being late every day.
Another solution highlighted in the report is to diversify the development patterns. This is what we as urban planners often look to for mixing uses. So for example, mixed-use development, that's the idea that instead of having this siloed area of commercial, residential, industrial, you mix those uses together so that you don't have to travel as far to get from one place to another. The way at NERC we've done this is through our Creating Livable Communities program, and if you want more information, please talk to Iman here in the audience. This is a program that for $402,000, we've so far awarded 7 communities grants to follow up on increasing their downtowns and bringing out a presence in their downtown to improve mixed use. And we did a report at NERC about highlighting where in their downtowns their core urban centers are.
And finally, realistic expectations. So the Urban Mobility Scorecard is actually a really great step in this process. It's not about, by solving congestion, we're not going to do it by creating billions and billions and billions of dollars in new roads. It's going to be a smaller incremental process where we can grab the low-hanging fruit, we can identify those things that are possible, we can change people's behavior. It doesn't have to be all about widening roads. But then there's also this other report that's produced by Transportation for America called Measuring What We Value, which is about setting realistic performance measures that can help planning organizations and local officials establish metrics that are going to help them solve the congestion problem.
So what are the conclusions from this report? Well, first, traffic congestion is a growing problem. We saw a temporary plateauing or slight downtick during the recession, but overall traffic congestion continues to grow with us. Better data can help pinpoint the symptoms of the congestion problem. We've looked at a lot of the data in this report and showed you some examples about delay and cost of congestion. Clearly that's helpful. There's no clear solution to the congestion problem, but there are a menu of options. So we presented 5 of them today, but there's perhaps others as well. And traffic congestion grows hand in hand with the economy. So if we value economic growth, which we should, we also have to understand that that comes with having to move more goods and more people to get to those goods, and therefore more congestion, at least in the current landscape that we perceive. So with that, we'd open up for any questions.
Some of the things we're doing more in the city is oftentimes if you improve intersections and how they function, you don't have to add lanes. And so we've worked hard, obviously we've done a lot with roundabouts, which really saves a lot of time and a lot of wasted energy. So that's something that's worked really well for us. But also in our traditional intersections, to use technology to make sure they're all speaking to each other, at least in the downtown, but of course they're all triggered, so it moves traffic. And I noticed going in some larger cities like Indianapolis, I don't know how many intersections they have that are smart intersections. You just sit there. And so I think that's really important. It's different than some of course, the larger interstate issues that you're talking about, but I think even in our cities and between our cities, we can continue to improve intersections, and that seems to be a very efficient way of moving traffic well without just simply adding lanes.
That's a great point. And intersections is that technology piece that can really be beneficial to limiting congestion. I went to school at the University of Illinois Chicago, and one of the professors worked for the cities for a number of years through some really dark days in the 70s. And he likes to share this story about how there was this one particular traffic engineer who had all the traffic lights timed between where he worked in City Hall and Oak Park, to where once he got off work, he could be in Oak Park in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So, so it goes to show that, a little bit of efficiency and a little bit of right timing can go a long way, even if it's for bad reasons. Yes.
First of all, correct you that this is not the lowest gas prices ever. Early in the week, it's not the lowest gas prices ever. Maybe in your lifetime, gas much cheaper. But also, you did not mention public transportation. I was wondering if that was deliberate or if that's not part of this question at all. Or
We did touch on the issue when we talked about providing choices. I realize that there's a lot more that we could, of course, talk about and deserve to be highlighted in this region as growing public transportation options. You're right. As a region, we tend to, unfortunately, under-prioritize our focus on public transportation, but that definitely has a changing landscape in terms of, we've seen ridership increases, we hear the reports at our Transportation Policy Committee all the time, and so it's clearly an issue that's going to grow.
will it be added into subsequent presentations that you make regarding this?
We will definitely look to highlight that and find more information on it.
It's covered on other boards.
Oh, it is, all right.
Any other questions? Great. Well, if you were asleep, now's your time to wake up. Thank you very much, and we appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. And for those of you who may be wanting to reference some of the metrics that were included up here or wanting to look at the slides, this presentation is included in the TPC website as a part of the NERC website. So it is available to the public if you want to be able to go back and reference their slides, and it is up now. So that then takes us to the report of the chair. I have a couple of things for you that we've been talking about the committee structure even prior to my tenure as the chair this year and working through the implementation process. We've started some of that with, I know that Gary's had some conversations with some of the folks on the Transportation Planning Committee, the TPC, and sort of how those things are going to start to shift a little bit and having the stakeholder meetings. And as we were transitioning through those things this year, we saw that kind of given the timeline of things and where we were at in the year with certain committee structures, that it made a little bit more sense to be able to populate those committees with the new membership that's coming on board at the start of next year as a result of elections and things like that. So the further implementation of that will take place next year as we start to put the new committees together with new membership. With that, the part of the process with the committee structure is to have the nominating committee meet prior to make a recommendation to the full commission on who the officers would be and members of the executive board. And that committee will be meeting at the end of this year. I think we're meeting on the 30th of December. It is going to be composed of the recommendation that is included in the committee structure that this body all voted on earlier this year. So we will have representatives from Lake Porter and LaPorte counties. And so we'll be meeting on the 30th to make a recommendation to the full commission at the January meeting on recommendations for the, as I said, the officer slate as well as the executive board. And I think that mostly concludes my report, and so I will turn it over to Ty.
Great, thank you very much. Let me just dive right in. So the first update I want to give you on is the Regional Cities Initiative. I think some of you have followed the press on this already. This is the report and recommendation that was just released on Tuesday, and that was when the big announcement was made. As you know, and we passed a resolution in support of the application for Northwest Indiana and NERC with RDA and Forum and NICD and One Region, all participated in supporting this application for double tracking along the South Shore line. And we were very single focused and very united in that. I think we had a very good presentation down in Indianapolis. Our legislators were down there to kind of cheer us on during that presentation, and I think that went really well. There were signals that were sent earlier on that they were focusing on South Bend and Fort Wayne and Evansville, and that turned out to be the case Tuesday, if you can track the news at all. What there was, just as a reminder, was $84 million that they were planning to give from the tax amnesty relief, and they ended up with more money than they thought they were going to get from the tax amnesty program. So what they ended up doing was not picking 2 of those 3 I mentioned. They decided to fund all 3. They were able to find another $42 million to fund all 3 of those. So congratulations to those communities, and particularly the South Bend application includes expanding commuter rail in South Bend. So it's still a win, I think, for our region, and that we still get attention on the South Shore line going out to South Bend. But there's other, yeah.
Could you, expanding rail in South Bend, could you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, they
Is it
have.
from the airport downtown, or?
I'm not sure of the exact proposal limits, but I know one of the big issues there is that curve around the airport in South Bend. I think Mike Nolan tells me that's an extra like 10 minutes or so into the trip
I thought that was
just to get around the airport. If anybody is more knowledgeable on that application, they can talk about that segment.
I don't know in detail, but I think that's the issue. When you're taking rail
Oh,
to
Joseph,
an
sorry.
airport.
Sorry, Joe's here from Nicktown.
Maybe I could explain what they're intending to do with South Bend. They want to improve the access to the airport. Right now, the South Shore trains access the airport through a roundabout route that enters the airport actually from the east, and then goes to the east, then south, and then back west. And it adds 10 minutes one way to the trip. But the airport would like to do, what the city would like to do, and what the point of their regional cities project is to rebuild that and reroute that into the western portion of the terminal area at the airport, where it would have a new right-of-way dropping south directly from the airport to the existing South Shore line about 2 miles further to the west. That would save 10 minutes one way from the trip and would allow for somewhat higher speeds, about 25 to 45 miles per hour versus the 5 to 15 miles per hour that they're limited to now. And it will improve turnaround time for trains, and it will also give people more encouragement to take the train because they won't be traveling east to ultimately go west. And this will also improve our this initiative from the South Bend area. It will also improve our electrical distribution system. Right now, it's so, the overhead wire that powers the trains is so old that you can't run new gallon cars out there. They just take too much power and it would blows the electrical circuits out there. We have to improve that. Their regional cities initiative would also ultimately stand to improve that also. Because our ultimate goal, as Mr. Nolan has said, is to get people from South Bend to Chicago in an hour and a half instead of the 2 hours and 20 minutes that it takes them now. That will result in improved ridership. So that's the South Bend's angle on their particular.
Thanks a lot, Joe. There's some other silver linings, I think, that are worth talking about and being mindful of with this, though. So, for one thing, the Regional Cities Initiative, I think that's really good for the state. This really promotes collaboration and really, I think, endorses what you all do here every month. And on top of that, as I think you know, part of the requirement to apply for this was to form an RDA modeled after the RDA here in Northwestern Indiana. So if invitation is the greatest form of flattery, basically the RDA in this program has been replicated across the state of Indiana. So that speaks really well for our government. The other things that have come out of this, one very practical and one more in terms of just awareness. The presentations that these groups that were united in supporting this application made, not only were they very well received, but I think the message of what's happening in Northwestern Indiana and the importance of the Chicago economy and how we are the gateway to that in Indiana Indiana. That was a very strong, united message, and I think we really made inroads into making that awareness happen, and that was valuable in and of itself, regardless of the funding. But there's a practical outcome in that that message was so strong, and our application was so focused on this double tracking issue and very clear, that I think from the questions and dialogue that happened, most of the reason why it didn't land, particularly in this round in Northwest Indiana, was a matter of timing, because those funds were to access federal funds to double track the South Shore. All the questions from the panel when we gave our presentation were not about validity of the project, why do you want to do this, we don't think this is important. They were all about mechanics. How soon are you going to be able to act on this? What's the timing of this? Those kind of things. And so there's already, I think, some talk and commitment to try to find funding to do it, especially the environmental impact study to start.
Yeah, Ty, I can tell you that the governor likes the project, INDOT likes the project. There have been ongoing discussions to look for other funding sources. Part of what played into and we all knew this, we got a lot of unexpected money for the South Shore last year, and some folks were drugged to the table kicking and screaming to get that done. So we were told up front that it would be a real stretch for us to get it 2 years in a row. But the fact that all the folks who participated did such a good job that I've never seen such ownership down there in a Northwest Indiana project. So it's good for Michigan City. It reduces the travel times. I think it's got a lot of legs. Bill Hanna and I were on the phone almost all day. I forget whether it was Wednesday or Thursday, or excuse me, Tuesday or Wednesday, and everything was positive. So I think there's a lot of hope here. But congratulations to everybody who made us look very good when they were down. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? If we did double track from Michigan City to Gary, how much time would that save? The gentleman was saying the goal is to South Bend to Chicago in 90 minutes or less, and that the project in South Bend is going to get us a little closer. If we double track Michigan City to Gary, how much time would that save us?
I could answer that. Ultimately, our goal not only is an hour and a half from South Bend to Chicago, but 1 hour from Michigan City, and about 30, 35 minutes from Gary and 25 minutes from Hammond to Chicago. So,
But if we did get that double track that we're trying to pursue, how much does that in itself save us?
that would probably be about 5 or 10 minutes time savings, since you no longer have to have one train wait for another at passing signing to go through. Each can move freely once you've done the whole thing, Michigan City and Michigan City to Gary. Then trains can move freely at track speed and don't have to wait for each other. That'll save about 5 or 10 minutes.
Hey.
We have, one of the things that was released on Tuesday was a video summarizing all of the applicants. That was very well done. This is in addition to, there was a video that we produced that NERC's in and other organizations are in for the actual presentation, but this was a compilation that interviewed some key folks, including our esteemed chair. It's only a minute, so I asked Stephen to set up and show it so you can see that it was well done. This is just the section related to Northwest Indiana, but you can watch this video to see all the applications.
We are literally 20 minutes from the city of Chicago by car. The Northwest region is comprised of LaPorte County, Porter County, and Lake County.
Double tracking the South Shore line provides opportunities for folks who are looking for communities that they can feel a part of, that they feel attached to.
Right now we're standing on the west dunes of Indiana Dunes State Park. The traffic here is legend with cars, and so we're struggling with how do we move the number of people who want to get here using alternative ways of transportation.
The South Shore had 2 tracks. It would open up transportation corridors for not only goods, but also employees. We have Illinois companies every day coming over here looking for a place to locate their business. Having a high-speed commuter rail service is extremely important. And it ends up giving us an advantage over Illinois, and we're going to see more people from Illinois call Indiana home.
Thank Thanks, Stephen. Again, you can look on the Regional Cities Initiative. I think they have that up on their website if you just Google Regional Cities Initiative and see the other applications. Let me move on to the FAST Act. This has been a big month. Yeah, sorry, Kevin, question.
Not a question, a comment. So tying back to the first presentation, another advantage of the double track is not just the speed with which you can get to Chicago or cut your commute. It's the lack of congestion. So if you have two tracks and there's an accident or something else, you have a way around to continue instead of sitting there waiting for the tracks to be clear or anything to be fixed. So it ties into your earlier congestion.
Thanks for pointing that out. That's true. There's the time savings, and there's also just the lack of elimination of delay because of that. I know one of the things Mike often says is if you can shave down South Bend into like an hour and a half commute, suddenly South Bend is more than the Chicago commuting region. It's more attractive as well. Any other questions? Sorry to move so quickly, because we have a lot to cover. My dad always told me the first rule of show business is always leave them wanting more. So I'm just trying to do that. Any other questions on that before I move to the other? The other big news this month was the FAST Act. That is the Highway Transportation Bill. That was a big deal in coming. I'm going to let Mitch give a summary on the key points, but while he's getting set up, if he's able to get set up,
Keep going.
Let me give you the background. First of all, Justin Mount is here from Senator Donnelly's office, and just want to thank the senator. Our concerns and questions were very much taken into account, and the senator's office is very good. All our representatives are very good about keeping us informed about the progress of this. So again, this may be for some of you old news now, but the president signed on December 4th, I believe it was, a 5-year transportation bill. This is after, I think, $70 billion over the course of however many extensions there have been that have just been put into to try to cover the funds for highway, for transportation in general. So this new bill, 5 years, predictable, stable funding is the good part of this. I think everybody's relieved to have that kind of predictability for the next 5 years, and that's good for all of us. And so I don't want to take away from the good things about that and the very hard bipartisan work that was done to be able to pass that. That was all very commendable. But just to keep on the table, if there's a bad news side to this, it's just the realities that it does not include a long-term fix for sustaining the Highway Trust Fund. The $300 whatever billion that was as part of this program, $305 billion, I believe. This patched together from sources such as the Federal Reserve to try to meet that funding does not address the Highway Trust Fund per se, which will continue to decline over time. So while we're moving forward with this 5-year bill, there's still a lot of work, and I don't mean just for us, I mean nationally, to try to figure out the funding situation. I'm very thankful Representative Soliday is here, and I'll move to that, to the state level, and let him speak to that after we talk about the national level. But much is moving on the state level as well. So with that, Mitch, if you're willing to give the high points, that'd be great.
Good morning. All right. As Ty was saying, we have a new bill, and I'm here to unpack it for you as rudimentary as possible. So welcome to the FAST Act. This was a presentation I approved upon the Safety Loop one about 10 years ago, but let's give an overview of what that means, because we love acronyms in the federal vernacular. So that is Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, after 36 short-term extensions. When you talk about congressional gridlock, there's probably no better way of showing it than that type of extension issue. But thankfully, we now have a long-term bill that we can talk about and be proud about. So it's a history of big money, if you don't know where this all kind of stems from. The first bill of its kind that came out was the ICE-T in 1991. Of course, there's always been federal authorizations for transportation, but this one was big because it set aside some interesting programs. $155 billion for 6 years, T21. $217 billion in 6 years. Then Safety Loop, probably the worst federal acronym ever created. 2005 at $286.5 billion years. MAP 21, this was the one that came out 2012 at $105 billion, but for only 2 measly years. Again, coming back to this table over and over again, all those short-term extensions. So now we have the FAST Act, the 5-year bill at $305 billion. As you can see, it's kind of in line with the previous bills that have been approved by Congress. But what is the actual need? I should actually give away a prize for this. It's a big bag of money, actually. $2.2 trillion is the actual need. You hear about our crumbling infrastructure, you hear about the fact that we're underinvested in our transportation network. There's no more glaring example than that. And when I talk about $2.2 trillion, this is just for the roads. We're not even getting into freight, railroad issues, or transit for that matter. So we have a huge need to deal with in this country. So what are the changes from the last bill? It increases the local STP, or the Surface Transportation Program allotment, from 50 to 55% over the life of the act, pretty much flatlining it from the previous bill, just a slight increase. It converts the Surface Transportation Program to a block grant, which means increased flexibility. Not sure what that's going to mean yet, but they're looking for that. And these next two items, dealing with environmental reviews, dealing with eliminating or consolidating US DOT offices, it's about streamlining the process. Who's ever had the joy of working with us on a federally aided project, you understand about the time and money aspects of dealing with it. So they're trying to get to the heart of eliminating the time issue here. It increases dedicated bus funding by 89%, which is a positive. And this last one here, which is interesting, about feasibility study for drivers under the influence of marijuana. If you have your packet with you, pages 4 and 5, or 5 and 6, actually have a bullet-by-bullet description, and I'm just taking the highlights. I bring up this last one only because several states have now enacted marijuana laws. We understand that. And now they're trying to find out if there's an impairment rate for marijuana. I never thought there could be. I don't know how you can measure that, but that's what they're going to study for here. So moving on, TAP. If you know about TAP, I bring this up specifically because it probably has undergone the most changes under the FAST Act. TAP is Transportation Alternatives Program, previously named Transportation Enhancement. Yes, the Trails Program. So what happened to it? Well, it has now been turned aside into an STP block grant program. We do not have TAP, we do not have TE, we just simply have Surface Transportation Program as a set-aside, and we're going to have a catchy new name for that. Nonprofits are now eligible for the money. That's across the board. So all Surface Transportation Program monies are now nonprofit eligible. That's huge. It has not happened before. Nonprofits have had to team up with a community or any kind of local public authority to have funding eligible for them, and now they can come straight to the trough themselves. There's a minor funding increases over MAP 21 in TAP. I mean, really minor. I think the set aside in MAP 21, I think it's about maybe $10 million over. So again, practically flatlined. There is flexibility in state and local design for complete streets. There is a huge emphasis now. We've heard about complete streets. All of you are wise enough to pass it here at the regional level back in 2010. It's taken fire around the country now. I think more than half of our MPOs in Indiana have a complete streets policy. We have several policies that have been adopted here in Northwest Indiana. At the federal level, they want to have that done at the state DOT level to influence them and to influence the other MPOs that have not got on board with the program. So we're going to see a lot more complete streets in all types of transportation designs across the board. And it prioritizes bike and ped safety through education and enforcement. Mayor Freeman Wilson is very aware, and she was actively participant last April when US DOT came here and did a safety assessment in the city of Gary, and that was a pilot program to see how this would work on a national level. We have an increase in bike and ped fatalities and injuries with automobiles, and we're looking for ways to decrease that. So we're going to see more of that come online through the FAST Act. This is fresh out of the oven, okay, like any good bread. I don't have any more details beyond what I have just told you. We are still trying to figure out with funding and what have you. I think Gary had mentioned before that we're now in the first year of the FAST Act. Fiscal year 2016 acts as the first year. How that breaks down in the funding and how that breaks down across the programs, I'm sure Gary would be more than happy to let you know as we go along, and with the guidance and with the rulemaking as well from the Federal Highway Administration. So that's all I have regarding the FAST Act, and I'll kick it over.
Be glad to take some questions and comments on that, but just a quick wrap-up thing too. As Mitch said, folks are still combing through the legislation. It's a 1,300-page bill. So
yes,
groups are still trying to comb through those 1,300 pages. In fact, I'll be on a call this afternoon with our national association about the local impacts from that bill, and more will be forthcoming as it transpires. So I want to turn over to Representative Soliday, but if there's any questions on the federal level, again, we'll keep rolling out the details as we know more.
Thank you.
Right. Again, I'm very thankful to Representative Soliday is here. He's been not only a good supporter for NERC, but has just done so much to focus on the infrastructure needs of this state. He can certainly tell you this better than I could, but already the talk about this next session is the session of infrastructure. So that's a big part of that. So he graciously agreed to, he's on the spot here, give his sneak preview, I guess you'd say, of what's coming up in the next session. Thank you.
Sure. When I became chairman 5 years ago, folks were talking about the need for road funding after major moves. Money started to disappear and had been spent. And Senator Kenley and the financial powers then basically said to me, look, the road building folks will never have enough money, so kind of ignore them. Well, I come from the business community, so we started on a plan then to define the problem, not look at money, but do we have a problem like the rest of the nation has, and then make a plan, gather information, act on the plan, make an action plan, and critique all the way. Are we on track? Do we have right data? We had pretty good data for the state. From the locals, it's very weak. LTAP had some good data on the rural. They had done a study. There was some argument out of INDOT that it hadn't been peer reviewed. I do peer reviews for the National Academy of Sciences. It would have stood up to peer review, but it's the politics of the game. The MPOs did an excellent job of providing data to us, but it's old data, and we don't have a continuous flow coming in. So we said from day one, we're going to be data-driven, we're going to be strategic in our thinking, and we are going to be empirical in the data. The standard argument I hate, so you all know when they campaign and say that I don't do anything for Northwest Indiana, I do not like cloud-based infrastructure fund allocations. It should be transparent. People should be able to see why and where we spend money and limited resources. So that's been our thinking from day one. We had the previous commissioner cooperated in that endeavor, and he made a number of presentations, and bridges are a good indication for the state, and yours are worse than ours are in the state. We have about 8%, somewhere in that area, of bridges that are poor, rated as poor, which is a relatively scientific term. Poor means bridges start to decline unpredictably. That doesn't mean they're unsafe, but they decline unpredictably. So if you have a couple go bad in the same year, the budget goes to pieces. What the commissioner said in multiple reports, if we do nothing, within 5 years we'll be at 15%. And it would take $300 million to stop the decline just for the state, $300 million more than is currently allocated. So we put together a coalition of folks, stakeholders that have met regularly for the last 4 years, plus summer study committees. And the numbers roughly are this. For the state, we need about $1 billion more incrementally every year, and for locals, about $570 million. And additional. And I've said to locals consistently since we started, we're not going to raise the taxes and you spend it however you want. We're a partnership. We're going to work together. I will help you. Now, when this all started to come together and the speaker announced that this would be the year of infrastructure and the governor and the Senate gasped, he was serious. And so we started to put together finalization of a plan. And we have not released our bill, but everyone was pretty adamant, nothing for locals. Well, we were able to convince them that we have to have something for locals, and in the bill will be money for locals and new tools for locals. So let me talk quickly about where the bills are. The Senate just released their bill. I will be as upfront as I can. I am not fond of it. That is your money. You raised it. They're giving it back to you early. It's a one-time shot. It is not strategic. I think we withheld too much in the recession. I think that needs to be dealt with, but then to come back and tell you how to spend it is not where I'm at. And there are a whole lot of folks who feel the same way I do before you pile on and say, wow, I love the Senate bill. should have your money. You need to have few counties during the recession were unable. You've got to have something to do your budgets before we know how much is actually going to come in. So there needs to be some cushion so you don't default to the state, but not at the rate we're withholding it. So everybody agrees that needs to be dealt with, but to tie it to road funding, a lot of us disagree. The governor's bill borrows money, which a number of us are not fond of, and again, it's short term. I think there's things there we can build on. And the other plan that's been offered, which was a response to the governor's plan, which is spend all of the surplus, quote, surplus. There is no surplus. There is an operating balance, and it is not in a pile of money. It is in the school rainy day fund, which we used 15 million of to help Gary out, the Gary schools out this year. There is a ton of it in Medicaid relief, because we have no idea where Medicaid is one of the most unpredictable things we have in the budget. So anyway, that bill will not have life. So that's for folks who want to play politics. So what is in our bill, which should be of interest to you all, I hope. One, we are going to adjust the gasoline tax for inflation back to 2002. That's not a tax increase, that is an adjustment so that you are basically investing the same dollars in trued up dollars that you were in 2002. Second thing, hold your breath if you're a smoker. We currently, the money that comes in on the gasoline tax goes to roads in a 53-47 split. The sales tax on gasoline, different than most states, all goes to the general fund, of which Medicaid is a part. And a very large part of our Medicaid expenses are smoking related. So our goal long term is to move that gasoline sales tax to roads and transportation funding. But we're not going to just create a giant hole. We're going to fill it up as we go. So one of the things we're going to use to fill that gap is we are going to have a user fee on cigarettes of $1. And that money will go to Medicaid, the Medicaid funds. Budget dollars freed up will be gasoline sales tax dollars. Now, here's the bad news for you. I think it's good news. That money will not go to MVH. That money will go to a new grant account fund that you all can apply for in a one-page application. You won't need to have a beauty consultant to be a participant. It's an experimental piece. Project has to be $1 million. It has to be roads and bridges. I love bike paths, but that's not where our problem is right now. It has to be roads and bridges, and you have to have skin in the game. Now, the bill at this moment says 50-50. My goal is we'll do 80 and you do 20. And I don't care where you get the money. I don't care where you get it. Not my business to run your entity. But I'm going to help you a little bit with that matching money, depending on where you are politically courageously. We are going to empower cities with 20,000 population or more to raise their own wheel tax. We are going, well, assuming we get it passed and you all support it, we will raise the amount of the wheel tax, if you already have a wheel tax that you can pass, and we will have a dedicated LOIT fund that you can pass for roads and transportation. And that'll be your money, probably in the neighborhood of 0.25, sort of like we have for the public safety piece. So those are tools you will have. The true-up for gasoline tax will be split, so you'll get a bump in MVH also. So there are a number of other things in the bill, but those are kind of the key ones that are out there. I'd be glad to answer questions. That we have clearly have some disconnects. I think we can reach a compromise. Speaker announced the cigarette user fee yesterday, and we had 7 fairly large entities call and endorse the full bill before I was on the floor to speak at 3:30. So one of them was not Marlboro. So there's more to the bill, but that ties.
I've got two questions. The first being with the dedicated LOIT for roads, would that still fall under the same construct of the code councils, or would that LOIT construct allow for the decoupling of cities from counties?
Why don't you get some mayors together and tell me what you would like?
All right. Then next question would be the 20,000 population floor. Is that hard and fast, or can you talk to some of the driver behind the population?
It was divine revelation. The people more powerful than I said we're not going to create 300 taxing units in the state, and so 20,000 gives us 44. And I was it's an experiment. Can we make it work? Will people participate? Because one of the big arguments that I get hit with is we give locals tools and they don't use them, or they divert money. So it's sort of like, well, if I can find 5 honest people, will you grant me the money? So we arrived at 20,000, and I wish I could do more, but we need to prove this works. Mayor,
20,000 is the reporting threshold for the MPH reports for communities in that size anyway, so that may be where they got the number.
I got the number. I'm glad you gave me that fact, but it was a divine revelation.
You can use mine. So I kind of gave that up after
I think Mayor Costa says.
And I think we're all excited about this recent development because we've known it's weight on our conscience that we're not investing. And deferred maintenance is unfair to the next generation. That's exactly what we're doing. And we have to take this bull by the horns and solve it now. And it may be a bit of a bitter pill to swallow, but the other thing is this: whether you're a business person or you're public government, you know that when you invest in the things that matter, it yields positive results. So we're going to see these investments, assuming that they go through, is going to raise all of Northwest Indiana, because when you invest in infrastructure, good things happen. People want to move here, business wants to move here. But again, the worst thing is we're avoiding thrusting on the next generation for infrastructure and the debt. In a sense, it's a debt to be paid, like it's an unfunded pension liability. Fortunately, we don't have that problem, as our neighbor to the west does, and it is impacted. So I appreciate, we're all going to keep our fingers crossed, do what we can to make sure that we get a long-term focus, not a short-term fix to this very important issue.
Let me I left one thing out of the bill that I will get beat up about, but I'm old and I don't care, because it needs to be discussed. We created a tool, looked at all the ways you can fund roads, and then good, better, best, and it was really enlightening. Gasoline tax falls off like a rock, and starting about 2021 because of CAFE standards. One of the things that it did show us was that if we were to toll I-65 and I-70, our most expensive maintenance, about a third of our budget goes into maintaining those roads. If we were to toll them at the same rate as the toll road, then we could build 6 lanes border to border, both directions, rebuild the portions that are over 50 years old, and maintain them in perpetuity, and free up $365 million of budget money for MBH and highways. People instantly say no tolls, but the concept of user pays is one that a lot of people buy into. So in the bill, it does not toll those roads. It says it would be irresponsible not to study it. So there is a mandatory study to move forward with that. The other piece for you all that you should know is I mentioned the weakness of the data from locals. So if you apply for a grant, you must have an asset management plan. You can get an asset management plan from LTAP free, or if you're Hamilton County, you can buy the Pucci Finuli that measures everything that ever happens in your county. But We've allocated $250,000 to LTAP to collect 6 data points from that money and crunch that data. And again, I've talked to Sheldrake and I've talked to Moore. We're going to make the questions for you all simple so that we can add the data in. We have more requests for grants than we have grants, so I'm completely transparent. Trying to be completely transparent. We'll evaluate first on safety, second on congestion and environment, and then third, something new to you out of that data we're collecting. Everybody's project is economic development, but that can be measured. So they are going to develop a one-page, 2 economists, 2 engineers, a one-page question about your project to determine economic contribution to the region. And Northwest Indiana should be fairly easy. And we'll rate the project 1 through 100, and if Michael gets an 85 and I get an 80, the argument won't be whether somebody loved Michael more than me, even though he's more lovable. It'll be, did we have the right inputs? We'll argue about data inputs, and we'll use multivariate modeling to, and again, it's an experimental thing, but trying to make the system fair and transparent. And I've committed to the Association of Counties that we will not have something that will eat up all of your money and consultants to fill out the form.
I just want to add one more thing onto this of just thanking Representative Soliday for all the hard work that he has done with this and his availability to talk to a number of us that I have very much appreciated his flexibility with scheduling and things that I've had conversations with him on the weekend as he's out having his daily constitutional walk, and so I really appreciate all of the work that he's done here and continues to do down in Indianapolis of raising attention towards this very important issue, and his understanding of the importance of including local money and access to some tools available to locals, which has been an uphill battle for local government for, I think, quite some time. So I think it's really important to note the hard work that Representative Soliday has done on this.
Thank you very much. I'm going to deviate from my points just very quickly for something else that has come up recently that I think is also important and really in the scheme of things ties together, and that's the One Region effort. There was a kind of a 1-2 punch that happened recently, that One Region, which is off with the Times, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But we participated in the Better Government Committee at One Region, as some of you on this commission have. One Region did a survey using Nelson Harris to conduct a survey of residents about their perceptions of the region. We've got a copy of the one-page summary of that at your place, and it's worth taking a look at. 465 respondents. We have extra copies on the table over there too. I won't go on about this just in the interest of time, but just in the bottom right corner, there's one about whether Northwestern Indiana is headed in the right direction. And again, you can argue about sample size and all that sort of thing, but the majority say yes, but there's still, I think, a lot of folks out there that don't necessarily see what's happening in this forum every month and in other regional forums across the whole 3 counties. That I think would change that perception of that if they knew truly what was going on. And that leads to where I'm going. There was a regional priorities summit hosted by One Region that the forum helped design as well. We provided the keypad polling support, so Sarah Ganoski from our staff did that. And while that discussion was going on, that's the other handout I put on your place. One Region had hired an artist to basically track the conversation, and you can see the results of that for regional coordination and transportation and economic development. And I think it kind of a fun way it captures the gist of the discussion and what people were talking about, so you can see what was on people's minds of the 200 that attended this, over 200 that attended this event. Now on the back page of that is the time summation of the results of the keypad polling that we did during that meeting in 4 areas. I mentioned regional coordination and transportation and economic development, also education. But what's relevant to our discussion today is you can see that despite talking about a host of issues across the region, as you can see on the artist's drawings, the South Shore, public transit, at the top of those categories. And I think that speaks a lot to what people see as their perceived needs, and speaks very well to what we're talking about today. So on that note, as an outgrowth of those meetings, I had a great conversation with Bob Heiss, who's the editor of The Times, and graciously came here today. And Bob has something he wants to pitch, at least invite you to participate in, to again help get that message out of all the good stuff that's happening in the region that doesn't necessarily get talked about. So, Bob.
Thank you. I found out at the One Region Priority Summit that you all meet like this. I did not know that. I'm kind of new. I'm still in only my second year. So what I want to present is an idea that will build on One Region and build on a Region Proud initiative that I think we have. We're going to create a government corner in the Times, the website and the Sunday Forum section. And there's two parts to that. One is all the mayors yesterday received a communication welcoming them to write columns in the schedule, up to 6 columns a year that will be published in Forum on the schedule. But I want to make that offer to every community in the region, and we're going to, through NERC, communicate that in January to allow every community to write about what is great about, what are you doing, what are you proud of, what do you want people to know about, what do you want to hear feedback from. It'll be up to you. But every January we'll publicize it in February. In March, you'll get another request. We'll publicize it in April. So what we're creating is a government corner. I think it will increase the literacy of what people know about their governments and what you're doing and the way you communicate. And we're in an amazing age right now, and it's right here. And every week, the Times gets as many as 250,000 people reading print, the website, or this. And this continues to grow, and it could be 90,000 people a week. And what's interesting about this is that younger people and people don't read print, they come to news websites, and they come from local, and they have a chance to learn about community in a way that they might not have known about. So I think these columns could help them and help everybody understand that. So I'm going to be sending it out and welcoming you to participate, and we'll publicize it, and I think it'll be a great way to increase Region Proud and One Region. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Bob. All right, now it's kind of the fun part, which is why I'm standing up, is we have, not only are we entering NERC's 50th anniversary year, but as you know, you've seen a parade of staff over this past year that have reached milestones. And these are the folks that work hard for you, and what's kind of neat about the ones, I don't know if this is even picking up, carry around this just to look good. I'll talk loud. So what's fun about this is that it just so happens we have quite a few staff today that have reached milestones, and a good chunk of these are folks that do not do the ensign salute. Is that what it's called? They actually work very hard for you behind the scenes. And so a lot of you have not met these folks, but you get a chance to meet them today. I'm going to do this actually by year and go incrementally up. So we have 2 that are having their 5-year service. That's Kelly Wanger, she's our chief accountant. And Meredith Stillwell, who's our administrative assistant. Meredith also helps maintain the NERC website. So congratulations, 5 years. Carolyn Brown has met her 10-year anniversary. Carolyn is the voice that you hear when you call NERC. And Carolyn is sitting right there. Come on up. And that's 10 years. So now moving up to 25 years. Connie Moose is our accounts payable manager. And again, all these folks, stuff works to get paid and everything, and it's very, very complicated and takes a lot of work, as a lot of you know. And Connie's a piece of that machine to help get that done. There's Connie right there. Connie, come right up. And last but not least, we have if you remember Steve Strain's hit his 40th, we have another 40-year anniversary. So I say that one for last because it's such a big number. So drum roll, please. Belinda Petrosky has reached her 40-year anniversary. Belinda's our transit planner. Yeah, what do you want to say?
40 years being a long time doesn't trust me.
Thank you. I just have just a few more, and then we move on to the meat and potatoes of all the finance stuff that's been produced by some of the folks that you just acknowledged just now. And this is, we have some commissioners that are transitioning off of NERC, and we wanted to recognize them. And so there's a few that are here that we have some certificates for. These are folks that have, as you know, have been very much a part of our body, have contributed a lot of information and a lot of good discussion, and we really appreciate their service, and we'll miss them a lot as they transition on. Tom Clauser, where's Tom? Thank you. Don Ensign, we're here from Greenwood. And Stan Douglas. Rich Murphy as well from Michigan City. I know. Thank you. I know Tom has brought some other folks from Ogden Dunes. If you would like to introduce who you brought to get them to be familiar with NERC.
Thank you, Todd. I'd like to introduce two of our new members, our town board and the representatives of NERC. Kathy Canola, stand up. Michael Weber. I gotta say one nice thing is, Ty, you got a heck of a good staff here. I've worked with it for 12 years, so I know what it's like. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I didn't want to put anybody in the spot, but if any of the Rich or Stan or John, if you want to say anything as well, feel free.
Well, I'd like to thank the NERC staff, John Swanson, prior to you. They came down, helped you with our 25-year plan. Very much appreciated. It's been an honor to serve, and the one thing I'm proud of and out of this is the regionalism and the ability of everyone, the big cities and the small towns to work together. And I really appreciate that over my 12 years of tenure and my 30 years of service on many boards. This is the board I will miss the most. So thank you.
All I can say, it's been a great ride. I attended my first NERC meeting 40 years ago. Some of you weren't born yet. But, I've seen this organization grow, and it's a class operation. And as I tell everybody, it's a very important commission, and I want everybody to understand that. Meet is here, and you need to come here and attend these meetings and be part of it. And as a general a long time ago, some of you will remember, General MacArthur says, "Oh, commissioners never die; they just fade away."
Yes, thank you. It's been a great experience serving on NERC the last 4 years. The regional perspective has certainly given me tools to bring back to Michigan City to serve my community. And I just would like to say a passion of mine has been how to figure out how we can leverage public transportation in the South Shore Railroad. And it's been thrown out there that we can get, the goal is to get from South Bend to Chicago in 90 minutes, and from Michigan City to Chicago 60 minutes. And that is a game changer for the region. And I would ask the big city mayors and the council members of the communities to educate yourself on this issue, because it's going to be some heavy lifting to get this done. But I think in the end it would be great rewards for the region. So thank you.
Thank you. Last but certainly not least, we have a surprise recognition too, and this is Perfect Attendance Awards. So these are folks that, in a lot of these cases, have gone above and beyond, because it's not just that they've gone to the quarterly 4 times a year, but have actually attended every single executive board meeting that they didn't even need to be at in some cases. So we've got several to recognize for that, sort of thanks for their faithful service. Don Ensign. Jim Tunn. Joe Simonetto. And last, the man with the nice tie, Jeff Benson. Thank you all again for your service. That's my report, and now it goes over to Jim for it. That's all right with you, for finance.
I have one thing before I want to move on to finance and personnel, and that is there was a question that came in of who are the members of the nominating committee that's going to meet, and the representatives are Brian Snedeker, who will be Lake County, Jim Tunn from Porter County, and then myself, and then we will meet with Ty, who is also a part of that. And that's the structure that was laid out in the committee process that we all passed. So now, actually, I will turn it over to Roosevelt to give the report on finance and personnel.
Thank you. Good morning. The Finance and Personnel Committee met on December 10th, and there are 3 items on your agenda that need adoption by the full commission. I'm going to move down to the 3rd item first, the 2016 budget, because that's the most important item on the agenda. And so if you turn to pages 64, we get on page 64. You'll notice we have a resolution 15-31. That resolution consists of 6 items that have to be adopted by this board. One is the general fund. The second item is a transit capital projects fund. The 3rd item is a transit operating projects fund. The 4th item is a LaPorte County revolving loan fund. And the 5th item is the salary schedule for the staff for 2016. And we have a matrix that we'll look at shortly. And then the 6th item is that you authorize the Finance and Personnel Committee to continue to oversee the administration of these budgets. So those are the 6 items that you're going to be approving in that resolution. First, I want to say that the NERC budget is a balanced budget, so it is balanced. The total fund amounts in each budget, the total fund amount for the general fund is $3.8 million. The total amount for the transit capital projects fund appropriation budget is $2.3 million. And that's on page, I'm reading these items off of page 66. The total fund for the transit operating projects fund is $3.6 million. And on page 67, the total amount for the LaPorte County revolving loan fund budget is $320,000. If you turn to page 68, this is more of a detail of the general fund of NERC. You'll notice up at the top
where you have salaries that we gave the employees a 2% salary increase, across the board salary increase. The employees received a 2% across the board salary increase. If you move down to fringe benefits, you'll notice that there was an increase in health insurance. If you move down to departmental and contractual, you'll notice that there were some increases in expenditures for environmental management, environmental promotions. There was an increase. Go down to environmental contracts, there was an increase. Go down to South Shore Clean City diesel retrofit, there was an increase. So these are more of environmental management line items. Those were primarily the increases in the budget. The overall budget increased 7.5%. If you go to the to page 73, that's the general fund revenue sources. And that's been itemized for you. And as I indicated, the budget is a balanced budget. You've got $3.8 million going out in expenditures, and you got $3.8 million, the same amount coming in with revenue. If you go to page 69, you got the Transit Capital Project Fund. These are the monies for the subrecipients for the bus vehicles and the related equipment, the capital projects, and it's been itemized down. You'll notice that the biggest expenditure there is the purchase of 18 new vehicles. If you go to page 70, we get to the Transit Operating Projects Fund. That's the operating expenditures for the subrecipients. And you'll notice that that's been itemized out for you also. And then finally on page 71, we have the LaPorte County revolving loan funds. If you go to page 72, you'll find that you have the salary matrix. That's the compensation set by the board for the staff and administration at NERC. And so moving back to page 64, we get back to resolution 15-31. A resolution of the Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission adopting the year 2016 appropriation budgets for the Commission's governmental funds and establishing salary guidelines for the year 2016. It's been recommended by the Finance Committee that you adopt this budget. And so, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt resolution number 15-31.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions, comments, discussion items?
Madam Chair, as a matter of testifying to the Commissioner's report, we did meet on the 10th, which is unusual. We normally meet, Finance and Personnel meet prior to this meeting. But we met on the 10th as a special meeting in order to give this extra scrutiny and review. So that meeting was much more extensive, about 2.5 hours worth of review. And Finance and Personnel stands firmly behind the recommendation that this be accepted. And we have done our due diligence in that regard.
Thank you. Any other items of discussion? I have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? 2016 budgets are adopted.
Thank you. Moving back up on the items, we get to procurement recommendations, and you'll find that on page 11 in your packet. Okay, on page 11 in your packet, we have 4 procurement recommendations. We have procurement number 15-23, procurement number 16-05, procurement number 16-02, and procurement 15-21. Procurement 15-23, that's for the purchase of ticket vending machines and onboard fare collection boxes for Chicago Dash for the city of Valparaiso. 80% of the funds are FTA funds, and it requires a 20% match. And the recommendation is to purchase equipment up to a total price of $60,000. Procurement number is 16-05. That's a procurement for a construction project for the bus garage and transit offices retrofit. 80% of that comes from the FDA and 20% comes from the local match. And the recommendation is to approve the project up to a total price of $180,000. And then finally, in the city of Valparaiso, we have procurement number 16-02. That's the purchase of a bus washing machine for the city of Valparaiso. And it's an 80-20 match also, and the recommendation is to approve the project up to a total price of $30,000. And then finally, we have procurement number 15-21. That's for the purchase of 16 new replacement vehicles, 2 vehicles for East Chicago Transit, 1 vehicle for North Township Dial-A-Ride, 2 vehicles for Opportunity Enterprises, 2 vehicles for Porter County Aging and Community Service, and 6 vehicles for South Lake County Community Services, and 3 vehicles for City of Valparaiso V-Line. Now this requires an 85-15 match. And the total price, the recommendation is to approve the project up to a total price of $1,156,650. The Finance Committee has recommended that these procurements be approved by the full board. And so, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve procurement number 15-23, number 16-05, number 16-02, and number 15-21.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the procurement recommendations. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the procurement recommendations, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Those are approved.
Thank you. The final item on the agenda for the Finance Committee is the Title VI Civil Rights Act 1964 program. And that's found on page 12 in your packet. And that's Resolution 15-30. It's a resolution authorizing the Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission to adopt the Title VI program of the U.S. Department of Transportation under the provisions of the FTA Circular 4702-1B, and it primarily pertains to the non-discrimination laws in regard to providing appropriate access to services and activities provided by federal agents and recipients of federal assistance. And it also pertains to the limited English proficiency requirement that you accommodate persons with limited English proficiency. And you have a copy of the entire Title VI program recertification docket in your packet. I would imagine that you perused over it. And so, Madam Chair, the Finance Committee recommends that the full board adopt resolution number 15-30, which is a resolution of Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission authorizing and adopting the Title VI program of the U.S. Department of Transportation under the provisions of the FTA Circular 4702-1B.
Second.
I'd like to make that motion. You second it? Okay.
Yes.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or discussion for the Resolution 15-30? Hearing none, all those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution 1530 passes.
Thank you. That concludes the report of the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Madam Chair, I mean, one quick additional comment. Those of us who are, or those of you who are not on the Finance and Personnel Committee may not be aware that there is a Government Finance Officers Association, and that association raises the bar for finance officers, for governmental agencies. One of the things that they do is recognize government agencies for financial reporting. And it's a pleasure for me to say that for the third year in a row, NERC has received the Comprehensive Annual Finance Reporting Award. It's the highest award that they give, and congratulations to Angie Hayes and her entire staff for that achievement.
Great, then that takes us next to the Environmental Management Policy Committee, and I'll turn to Mr. Benson.
Thank you very much. We moved our wheel a little bit. In your packet, you'll find approved minutes from our meeting 2 meetings ago. And so in that, the Chicago Wilderness Executive Director, Suzanne Malik McKenna, came and spoke to us about the Priority Species Initiative. We did have another meeting after that, and you'll see the approved minutes at your next meeting. I will yield the floor to move this up to the other thing that we had at the EMPC was the Blue Ways and Greenways 2020 update, which is the next thing on the agenda. So, thank you. I'm done.
All right, thank you very much. And I've just been notified that we are rapidly losing members, and so we are still at a quorum right now, but you are all held hostage. Nobody can. So we'll try and keep moving rapidly through the rest of the agenda here, and next to the Transportation Policy Committee, of which I'll turn to Mr. Dobas.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Transportation Policy Committee met on December 8th. The committee heard a presentation about United States bicycle routes 35 and 36, which were recently designated by INDOT. A presentation about those routes will be offered by NERC staff at next month's commission meeting. The committee also heard a presentation on initial survey results of ongoing Greenway and Blueway 2020 plan. Mitch Barloga will provide a brief update on the plans as they progress.
Thank you, Stan, and really brief. I presented at the EMPC, as Mr. Benson had mentioned, regarding some survey results. We're very pleased that we received nearly 800 surveys, either online or by intercept, meaning we actually talked to people on the trails regarding their preferences. We hope to start patching together the myriad of information, because we've also sent a municipal survey out to each of your communities for a detailed overview of how you're dealing with open space recreation as well as trails. Kathy Luther and myself are working on this. It's kind of a unique process. A lot of number crunching ahead of us, and we're hoping to have a draft of the plan out to you sometime in February or March. That is my report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. We have 6 actions for consideration. The first is Resolution 1525, which is found on pages 76 through 79 in the meeting packet. This is the 4th amendment to FY 2016 Unified Planning Work Program. Iman Abram will describe the proposed amendment.
Good morning, everybody. That's the 4th amendment for the Unified Planning Work Program, which is the UPWP. You may know the Unified Planning Work Program includes all NERC planning programs within a fiscal year, which is for 2016, and that's the 4th amendment. We include all NERC projects, but also we all require to include any significant transportation planning projects within the region. And today's amendment, it's the West Lake Transit-Oriented Development, and that was submitted by NICTI in partnership with the RDA to have a transit-oriented development for the city of Hammond, the town of Munster, and the town of Dyer. NICTI recognized all the benefits of providing public transportation for these communities. We talked about congestion within our region. We have over 300,000 moving between Indiana and downtown Chicago. This new West Lake corridor will add approximately 6,000 riders within the corridor, and we would like to have it planned right. It's not just to provide transportation and take roads out of the roads, but also we are looking on how to provide the perfect environment around transit stations. So encourage people to move to this area, live within transit-oriented development, improve the economic development and services that help people that they use transit every day. So we are actually support all the transit-oriented development. The Creating Livable Communities plan that we have for downtown area, we funded only one project for transit-oriented development, which is East Chicago, but all the area around transit stations or transit stops are eligible for the CLC funding or Creating Livable Communities. So we did not add the 3 new proposed stations around Hammond, Munster, and East Chicago, but that's once they are complete, that the study, we will add that to our CLC program. So that's in partnership with the RDA, as I mentioned. So the total funding coming from the Federal Transit Authority, which is $300,000, with a local match from the RDA of $75,000. So that's the amendment, which is I'm requiring an action on this. We have Joe also here from NICTE. If you have any question, or Joe, if you would like to add anything to that.
What this study will do is study the potential of transit-oriented development at any number of potential station sites along the West Lake line. We know from scoping meetings that we've held, there have been a number of suggested station locations. What this study is going to do is look at the potential of transit-oriented development at each of these locations. We will be working closely with the 3 municipalities involved and come up with a list of possible suggestions, working with the cities and their zoning ordinances and long-range plans to see what may or may not be possible. We do know that transit-oriented development around commuter stations has been a great success in many places in metropolitan Chicago. I was just recently in downtown Arlington Heights, which has really transformed itself through transit-oriented development. There are many suburban cities and towns in Illinois and across the country that have benefited from this, and we would like to try to tap that if possible with the West Lake as it is being built, so that we can get in on the ground floor of such developments. Again, the study will be working with the 3 municipalities, and we will come up with some with a blueprint that each municipality can use in whatever degree they feel possible to encourage residential and commercial development around the station locations. And this study, which is $175,000, 20% of which will be paid for by the RDA, and $300,000 comes from a pilot grant for transit-oriented development, will be the starting point.
Thank you. The Transportation Policy Committee recommends actions on Resolution 15-25. Motion.
Second. I have a motion and a second for the approval of Resolution 15-25. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adoption, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Then 1525 is adopted.
Thank you. Ahead of the following actions, Stephen Sesteric will present results from the public comment period, which can be found on pages 80 through 82.
Good morning, everyone. Very brief, for a very brief public comment report. It's on page 80 of your packets. We received one comment. This is pertaining to the 30-day public comment period for amending the functional classification system into the 2040 CRP update. As you can see, The one comment is included there, as well as our response to that. Basically, it was just sort of some housekeeping things, making sure the map was as accurate as possible, etc. Those problems were addressed, and also Sarah Gnoski has brought along the maps showing the functional classification system. In case you're curious to look at them, those are here today. And that is it. Any questions? All right, thank you.
The second action is on Resolution 15-26 on pages 83 through 87. The First Amendment to the 2040 Comprehensive Regional Plan Update Companion. Mitch Barloga will describe the proposed amendment.
Thank you. And as Stephen mentioned, we had the public comment period regarding this matter. Functional classification addition to the update companion. Actually, what happened was this was prepared back in the spring earlier this year. We had it adopted by the Transportation Policy Committee, but it did not get in the plan update in time for the actual adoption by May. So we're bringing it back to you today. The subsequent pages from 83 has the resolution, and then the pages that are attached has the new section of the functional classification attached to it for your reading. And with that said, it's just a minor addition to the plan, and I'll take any questions if there are any.
Questions? The Transportation Policy Committee recommends action on Resolution 15-26.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for adoption of Resolution 15-26. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? That is approved.
Thank you. The third action is Resolution 15-27 on pages 88 through 92. The Seventh Amendment to the Fiscal Year 2016-2019 Transportation Improvement Program. Gary Evers will describe the proposed amendment.
This amendment consists solely of NDOT projects, with the exception of the three at the tail end. All of them are adding a construction engineering phase to a construction project that is already in the tip. So what construction engineering is oversight by a professional engineer of a construction activity undertaken by the department. So probably the most significant project that you'll see in this list is a $36 million reconstruction project on I-94 between Salt Creek, just west of Chesterton, and where the concrete pavement begins on 94, just east of SR 49. The three projects being added at the end, a pipelining project on 94 in the vicinity of US 41 in LaPorte County, reconstruction of the weigh station scale pits on I-65 and 94, and an HMA overlay, hot mix asphalt overlay project on State Road 53 in Merrillville. These projects have been exposed to public comment, and we would ask for their adoption at this time into the TIP.
Motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adoption, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Then that is approved.
Thank you. The fourth action is on Resolution 15-28 on pages 93 through 104. The Eighth Amendment to the Fiscal Year 2016-2019 Transportation Improvement Program. Gary Everett again will describe the proposed amendment.
I apologize for the length of this amendment. It's roughly 10 pages long here. A situation we've encountered with NDOT is they're not accepting all of our administrative modifications. When we change a number on a project, a dollar amount, a year, a phase, any minor change, we usually do that administratively without bringing it through the amendment process. Because they've kicked some of those back to us, we are, and I think toward the end of being more visible as we migrate over to a more open committee structure here, we wanted to show you all of the changes that were being made to our local federal aid projects up front of the organization of those that new committee structure. So these are generally organized by urban area, Michigan City urbanized area projects are listed first, and then the Chicago Urbanized Area Lake and Porter County projects follow. Most of these changes are we're changing federal fund types, we're changing a year, we're changing a phase code, we're correcting an error, very minor changes. Toward the end, we are adding some new projects. For instance, for the city of LaPorte, we are adding at the top of page 97 a sidewalk replacement project. We are taking some leftover funds, some unallocated 2016 dollars that would otherwise revert to NDOT. The city of LaPorte is going to replace sidewalks with those funds. And similarly, in Lake and Porter counties, we are adding a number of new projects from the solicitation for projects that we undertook earlier this year. And those projects begin on page 103. So congratulations to the town of Merrillville, town of Porter, Schererville, Lowell, and I think that might be it on as far as the list of new projects is concerned. So those are totally new projects. We're instituting some projects into the TIP on page 104 that were in there before, but some additional expenses have arisen, so we have to reinstate them. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have concerning this bunch of projects, and hopefully the next amendment won't be as lengthy. But this was exposed for public comment, and we received no feedback from the public on these changes.
The Transportation Policy Committee recommends actions on Resolution 15 through 28.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 15-28. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval as submitted, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. And that is approved.
Thank you. Ahead of the following action, Gary Everett will present on the results of the recent solicitation for HSIP projects.
In a panic, we were reconciling our 2016 funds based upon some new information we received from NDOT back in June. In 2015, we only had to spend out the total of our dollars, all of our 18 million, actually 20 million a year in federal aid that we received. We simply had to spend it regardless of category. New information required us to reconcile all of our projected 2016 expenses by funding category. The four funding categories: Highway Safety Improvement Program, Congestion Mitigation Air Quality, TAP, and Surface Transportation Program. So many of the changes that you just saw in the prior amendment were a result of that reconciliation. What we found was that we had some money that we needed to allocate to projects. Specifically in 16, we had $700,000 that needed to be, we needed to find a home for under the HSIP program. We had money but no projects, which meant that the money would have reverted to NDOT. On page 107, you will see a short list of projects that we are bringing into the TIP, or will ultimately bring into the TIP, that will use the 2016 money and the balance of funds that we have available for the years 2017 through 2021. All of these projects have to be submitted to NDOT for eligibility review, but the starting point is your agreement to fund these projects, which we're fiscally able to do. There are some additional projects that we did not select under a separate category of HSIP. The ones that we're agreeing to fund here are, as indicated in the top block on that page. At the bottom block, we're using a term called RSA, that stands for Road Safety Audit, and that's where an engineer is hired to go out and evaluate a pavement or evaluate a safety-related situation there. Plus an allocation for NERC in the amount of $250,000 to implement a planning corridor study in the US 30 vicinity between roughly Clay to Broadway, and from about 73rd Avenue south to 93rd Avenue. Did I get that right? Yeah. And this will be 100% federal funding from USDOT. So we're looking at undertaking that project beginning in June with the cooperation of NDOT and the two communities. So we would ask at this time for your approval of the resolution so that we can proceed with these projects and bring them into the town.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the resolution as submitted. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? That is approved.
Was that 1529?
Yes.
Okay. The final action is Resolution 1532 on pages 108 through 110, the Ninth Amendment to the fiscal year 2016-2019 Transportation Improvement Program for Transit Project. Linda Petrosky will describe the proposed amendment.
Thank you. From my other 30-year veteran, managed to stick it out with me. If you look at page 110, you have the project, and this is subject to this amendment. This is for Michigan City for 2 vehicle replacements under the Section 5339 fund. This fund for Michigan City and LaPorte is, so these projects are selected by the state, and so they recently completed their round of project selection, and this needs to be added to the TIP. You did see earlier in Finance and Personnel the approval of the procurement list. Those projects for Valparaiso are all under the 5339 program that we get funding for here in Lake Porter County urbanized areas. So this is the Michigan City LaPorte urbanized area project, and I would ask for your approval of the resolution.
Transportation Policy Committee recommends actions on 1532.
So, second.
I have a motion and a second for the adoption of Resolution 15-32. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Then 1532 is adopted.
The next meeting of the Transportation Policy Committee will be on Tuesday, January 12th, here at the Construction Advancement Foundation. This concludes my final report of the Transportation Policy Committee, I think.
All right, continuing along then, I know that Mr. Powers had to head off to another item or another meeting that he had, but I will turn to Mr. Warner who had some report from him.
Thanks. Just one quick thing he wanted me to relay. I think many of you are already aware the governor was up here, whatever day that was. Many of you were there as well, to announce that he's allocating, I think it was $70 million towards I-65 widening. That's between US Route 30 and Route 2. So from Merrillville basically to Lowell, or the place where we just talked about the planning coordination study, down to Route 2. So the projected time frame, that's 3 lanes in each direction, projected time frame of April 17th. So I want to make sure you were aware of that.
Thank you. And then that takes us to Mr. Allen to talk about the Economic Development District.
Yes, I'll be brief. We met on November 25th, and our director, Matt Rook, informed us that we gave him permission to submit the request for official district designation to the Economic Development Administration. So that was submitted in this month of December. And along with it was we received a letter of recommendations from the Indiana Secretary of Commerce, Victor Smith. We received a letter of recommendation from the RDA, which was signed by the CEO, Bill Hanna, and the resolutions by the commissioners of the 3 counties, and the letter of commitment between the Northwest Indiana Economic Development District and NERC. Also, we presented a draft updated SEDS, which will be presented to the full Northwest Indiana Economic Development District Board at our next meeting for board approval. And that's all that has occurred. So That's all I have to report, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you very much. And that takes us to other business. Does anyone have any other business?
Just two things, not to be resolved today, but two legislators have approached me. One of the issues is a bill that is on the priority list for the Farm Bureau. And this is driven by some folks in Elkhart County and another county that do not like roundabouts. I'm sorry, Mayor Costa has left. But they had originally asked for legislation that there would be regional oversight boards of NDOT that would have authority to reject the project. That will not happen. That has now morphed into an advisory panel bill. Remember, this Farm Bureau, they swing a pretty big bat. So I have talked to the legislature, and Ty, I have said to them, my confusion is so much of our roads and so forth are covered by MPOs, which have the authority through the TIP. And while I love newspapers, I don't necessarily like to throw them raw meat. So it would be really good if we thought about, I don't mind them having an advisory group, public meetings, that's fine. But I don't want to have conflicts with MPOs and some advisory board that may be made up of the same people. So, I mean, here we have elected officials. So that's one. The second one may not have any life. I've been approached by a Northwest Indiana legislator to redesign NERC so that substitutes can be sent. I expressed some concern that this is more than just an MPO, and that while this was brought to the legislator by a town manager, that he was unable to attend and he would like to send somebody else. In my mind, there's some unintended consequences. A bill like that would come to my committee, and one of the jobs of the committee chair is to tell new legislators their baby is ugly. And then bill. But again, it's NERC, and I am one member, so however you'd like to manage that.
I appreciate that. Just to let you know, thanks to you talking to that legislator, we had a very long and good conversation with that legislator who was able to explain how NERC operates, how often it meets, how things work its way through the process. And she is talking to that community that raised that issue. I don't think they were aware of how many opportunities there are in the committee process for the town manager to help shape what they're concerned about. So
again, I am here with you as frequently as I can be, and I would feel non-transparent if I were to hear that bill and not share with you that it's out there and get your input. So.
Any other items? Yes.
Lake County once a month has a meeting called Lake County Advancement Committee meeting. And our January meeting will be held at T-Bones on the second Friday as it normally is. And our keynote speaker, from what I've been told, is Ed Soliday.
Any other items?
If I could add something about the roundabouts. I went to Poland 2 years ago, and they have many roundabouts. Now, the Polish nationality, usually they talk about them being slow, which I take exception to. But those roundabouts work very well in Poland.
Any other business? All right, then that takes us to public comment, of which we have one individual who is registered on our public comment sign up, and I will turn to Mr. Nowacki from Gary, Indiana.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. My name is Jim Nowacki. I'm a resident of the city of Gary, Indiana. Yes, thank you very much. And I wanted to comment on the action taken today regarding the Westlake Corridor. Bring to the board's attention that skepticism builds and opposition continues to build regarding the plans for that. I think to that point, comments made by the representative of NICD at this meeting should lend to the perception of how fraudulent the entire project is. For instance, when I looked at old schedules, South Shore, these go back to the 20s, so they're 90-year-old schedules. In 90 years, they've shaved 4 minutes off of the time from South Bend to Chicago, 4 minutes. You've heard today representatives say that they're going to shave 40 minutes, 40%, 40% of the schedule, over an hour from South Bend to Chicago. And then they followed up with a savings of a half an hour, 50% of the scheduled time from Gary to Chicago. On the face of it, that those numbers don't add up, even if you were deadheading on that train. They talked about how important it is to have a 90-minute train from South Bend to Chicago so that South Bend residents can access the Chicago market. But even at this date, they have a Amtrak train that doesn't make it in 90 minutes, with only a few stops on dedicated right-of-way. So when we look at a $600 million investment, and we see, for instance, in the Lake County government, spending their seeded money that they've already allocated to this project, they're spending it on roads and things. We see the same skepticism expressed by major cities in Northwest Indiana. I point to the largest city in Lake County and the sister city, East Chicago. Not yet signed on for it, skeptical of this project, holding their cards, waiting to see what else happens. And the reason it's important to me is because my city, Gary, Indiana, which was promised, what were they promised? Weren't they promised the Tiger Grant? They were promised the Regional City Grant. And so we signed on for over $300,000 of seeded money, as well as the $3.5 million that we give to the RDA. And all on the basis of promises. I'm going to urge the constituent cities of NERC to continue to not just to pile on this or take people at their words, but add up some of the numbers yourself. Where are you seeing an investment when they talk about 50% of the ridership is going to be cannibalized off of existing riders that are already taking the existing South Shore? So it's a big investment. It's a fraudulent investment. It's going to have not only a big impact on the region, but it's going to have a negative impact on the region when we think of the amount of money that we're investing in. But Merry Christmas to everybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nowacki. First of all, Merry Christmas to you as well. And I do want to just address a couple of items in that, and to just say I certainly appreciate the due diligence that you put into reviewing any number of different proposals for the commission here and to offer some feedback. And so I think that that's an important and healthy part of the discourse of our deliberation of ideas. I would offer, I think, a different interpretation of some of the language that you have presented here. I mean, you say that promises have been made in particular areas of that. I wouldn't necessarily couch them as promises, but as opportunities. And that regional cities being one of those things. That it was an opportunity presented to all of the participants across the state, of which various regions participated in a competition for selection, which was then discussed, but there was never at any point an understanding that this was a promise guaranteed to anyone until they were selected, and then we participated in that competition overall. As we look towards the opportunities that are coming forward within the Westlake Corridor, some of the regional cities projects of double tracking those various things, I think those are opportunities to continue studying some of the timing that may come along with any improvements, infrastructure improvements, and things of that nature, so that we can continue to fine-tune the return on investment that would come with these different types of projects to ensure that we're not cannibalizing any particular routes of commute to Chicago or other portions of our region. And so that it's not at a point that I think that anybody can claim that it's necessarily fraudulent, but it is an area where we have opportunities to continue to fine-tune those different types of opportunities that can come forward from different ways that we may be able to move people, goods, and things throughout our region. And so I think that concludes our public comment period, unless anyone else wanted to respond to the public comment that was offered. Hearing none, then we will move on to announcements. Any announcements that anyone has?
Happy holidays to everybody, and a wonderful new year.
Stay safe.
Well said. Any other announcements? Well, then that wraps up the bulk of our meeting. And so I want to thank everyone for a fantastic year of very difficult work that's been done by a number of folks on any number of different areas. Thank you for your patience and flexibility as we work through a number of things today, in this meeting today. We'll look forward to an exciting new year in 2016 with many new projects. To echo Mr. Benson's sentiments, happy holidays and Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Festivus to those of you that celebrate those things, and look forward to joining you in the next year. I would entertain a motion for adjournment. Lots of motions.